A very good morning to unknown presence here. Sorry that I'm gasping for breath. I came running. Yeah. So right at the time of creation, when the world came into existence, and when God created everything in a unique way, we will find that presence, that promise given to all forever. The gift of the image of God for the entire creation and for each and every one of us is a non-negotiable gift. And when this non-negotiable gift is given already, there is no way that anyone can take that away from us. And in our prayers for that, and our prayers for us today is for that image of God to blossom to its fullest capacity in this life's journey. So let us, in our breath, in our worship, and in every walk of life, find ways to do it. So the scripture reading for today is taken from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5, verses from 14 to 16. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be a light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I have put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your life. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God. Here is the word of God.
My name is Beverly Dale, known as Rev Bev to some folks, and I'm delighted to be here at this esteemed chapel with this wonderful history of radical people, people of faith. And so what I'm going to say today, I hope will challenge you and get you thinking differently perhaps, or deeply perhaps. And as a result, after we end the benediction and play a little bit of music, then if you're welcome to stay. I'm going to be here, and we'll do a general discussion of Q&A afterwards. So my topic is healing the sexual body, and I was going to put a subtitle, Heal the Planet. So I'm going to try to link together two big concepts of sociology and psychology. All right, we'll see if I can work that out. But I'm going to be beginning and ending with a poem that is in my new book, which I have to announce today is being released officially today. And for those of you who are here and those of you who are at home, if you would repeat the last three words of every phrase that I say, and the three words are going to change every time. Okay, so you just have to listen to what I'm going to say. And the poem is called Nobody Told Me Sex is Fun. And just as a cue, the first three words you're going to say twice. Sex is fun, sex is fun. You need to rehearse. All right. And it's going to change the next time, so just listen. Nobody told me that sex is fun. They only told me that sex is sin. And we all know that sin is bad. If fun is sin and sin is bad, and fun is bad, it's bad and fun is bad. If sex is fun and fun is sin, then sex is bad. But we all know that sex is joy. And we all know that God is joy. If sex is joy and God is joy, then sex is good. If if sex is joy and God is joy, then sex is good. A little louder, please. Sex is good. One more time. All right, I bet you didn't expect to be saying that today. Because that's our problem, isn't it? I dedicate this sermon to Dr. Phil Anderson, who is a professor at Chicago Theological Seminary, which is where I'm alumni. He was a theologian and a psychologist specializing in gestalt therapy. And I arrived on campus with a master's in sociology. And my academic study had helped me understand institutional sexism and systemic racism baked into systems, and I was a big picture sociologist. And I had taken every psychology course that he had taught me, and here I was going to sign up for another Gestalt course with him. And I was in his office, and he asked me about my previous academic work, and I told him it was a graduate degree in sociology and undergraduate. And he said, well, what are you going to do with that? And I heard that as an implicit criticism, because he was about healing the individual, and I was about healing the system. Right? So that is my challenge today, is see if we can put that together. Now, I have to admit, as a sociologist, that I am an activist at heart. I happen to think that words are cheap, that we have to live righteous lives with respect for others and love people. And that means we have to understand and dismantle, or at least confront, the systems, the institutions that are harmfully oppressive and even violent. So I stand behind my statement. And then, of course, there is James, faith without works is dead. And I would respond, love without works is dead. And if you have a lover who says, I love you, and never shows you that, then they're going to find the door pretty fast, right? And all right, I see some of you understand that. Okay, but what we want to do is be lovers of the world. That's the whole thing, right? Visionaries for a thriving planet, for God's global family, humanity beyond borders that reset, healers of the needless pain and suffering that we inflict on one another and ourselves, and laying aside all this harmful distancing that keep us from seeing one another made in the image of God. And Matthew writes, let your light shine, my friend. God colors, let it shine. So, I want to tell you that this year, I am celebrating my 40 years anniversary of being a pastor. My ordination is 40 years ago. Yes, and so you're going to get the benefit of my 40 years of here's what I have learned, okay? We'll try to do it in a short period of time. But God and sex question have been paramount for me, and we can talk about that later if you wish. But my question is, how shall we heal all the bodies of this planet and those who are suffering in their bodies? Is it through activism? Is it one-on-one? Is the focus on systems, or is the focus on individuals? And I'm beginning to think, just a little tip here, I think Phil Anderson might have had something that I didn't understand. So that's where we're going with this. But first we're going to start. Body justice is the language I use. It's a more encompassing word than sexual justice. So I may use them interchangeably, but body justice gets us at that bigger picture that's really where the intersectionality of the systems operate, okay? And I would say that's Apostle Paul's powers and principalities. That's what we're entrenched in. But I want to suggest that we are living now in a time of sexual moral panic. And this is a sociological perspective. Anti-woman. Control women's reproduction and their freedom. 41 states have restricted abortion with only a few exceptions. 13 have passed total abortion. And we have also seen increased mortality, maternal mortality, because of these laws. And we know that those laws particularly impact marginalized communities. Anti-trans, 550 bills that targeted trans people in 2023, 585 so far, and it's only October. Okay. This month, Nature magazine ran a headline of research that says, groundbreaking study, anti-trans state laws increased suicide attempts by 72%. And Texas is going to stop processing driver's license gender changes and even begin reverting valid licenses for trans people who previously changed their gender. Thank you, Texas. Anti-black and brown bodies and gay bodies, 4,300 book bans in 23 states, 521 public schools between July and December of last year. Anti-free speech as of June 2024, 21 new laws on adult content on the internet. Note, this is mostly about panic about sexuality. And you want to know panic, Ron DeSantis bans, get a load of this, Florida's sex ed classes from mentioning anatomy and contraceptives. All districts are now required to promote abstinence and excluding discussion of consent. Oh, that's really smart, isn't it? And remove any pictures of reproductive organs. What is a sex educator supposed to be doing in Florida? I feel sorry for them. So, bottom line, we have an entire right-wing political party that is jumping out of its skin to restrict the body. Case in point, just this week, a current Republican state senator, Dan Foreman in Idaho, a retired cop, well known for his radical Christian nationalist ideology, simmers anger issues all the time, sent out an angry Facebook post and reflected his moral panic about sexuality. On his online tirade, abortion is murder, gender-affirming care for transgender people is sick and demonically influenced, homosexuality is an abomination, and of course there is this racism and antipathy toward the other, because the reason he wrote this is because he had made headlines by telling a Native American to go back where she came from. All right, this is one white Christian nationalist male who's feeling out of control and in a panic. And he is not alone. Where is the church in this? Where's the good news about the body? How do we ease the sexual panic? What is this panic about? And what does it have to do with the church? I can't answer all of those questions today. I just pose them to you to figure out, and I will tell you hints. Now, the liberal and progressive churches may tackle body justice. I'll grant you that, as long as we call it social justice. We don't want to call it sexual justice now. All right? Where's the theology of pleasure? Where's the theology that connects God in the flesh with our flesh? Or is that only going to be about in heaven in a sweet by and by? We have a party-going, rule-breaking, banquet-keeping, attending Jesus. What do we do with that? Well, obviously, not much. Shine, my friend. Matthew says, let it shine. Are we shining? The system of the world, or Paul calls it the flesh, or empire, is one of domination of bodies. The system is now in the throes of trying to keep those systems of power and domination from being dismantled. And it was being dismantled by democratic impulses, by egalitarian impulses. And it's pushing back against criticisms that the domination model is bringing us to the brink of extinction and genocide, because it is. Right? So that's a sociological problem, and it's dangerous, and the statistics show. So in this toxic ocean, there is a current of toxic masculinity. as well as men who feel emasculated. There is insecurity, there is bigotry, there is even, and there's always, currents of acceptance of a certain level of violence toward those who are non-white or non-heterosexual, non-binary, and toward those who are non-first world, and if they're just far away. Can you say Gaza, Sudan, Haiti, you name them, insert. As it relates to the sexual body, this is toxic sludge that creates dishonesty, hypocrisy, pain, and suffering, prevents intimacy. Yeah. As it relates to the sexual body, the practice of procreative sex that was learned from porn instead of comprehensive sex ed. You know what happens to those relationships? Or wedding expectations of constant access and universal and always consent. Virginity equals sexual and marital bliss. This is toxic soup we are all swimming in. I don't have time to tell you the anecdotes of what I hear when I listen to the sexual health professionals that I train through the Incarnation Institute. One of them says, "It's a hot mess out there." And they're talking to people who've been married, and I'm talking about heterosexual couples now, have been married 4 years, never had sexual experiences. By the time they get to 10 years, they're already so furious, have so many other accumulated pains. It's a hot mess. And then there's the problem that we seldom name, and we don't preach about it, and we seldom want to even approach the topic. We ourselves are all sexually wounded by this system of body domination. It's not just economical and social and political, it is sexual. And in this cesspool of toxicity where we swim in and around each other's bodies, jostling for domination or at least an identity that'll be acceptable, we just need somebody, some people, someplace to find a lighthouse in this shadow time. We're swimming in a mess. Who, where is the light shining on that domination system of some bodies are more valuable than other bodies? And all of us must be sexually ignorant. Somebody has to open our eyes to a different way. And the scripture says, "Let your light shine, my friend." Child psychologist Carol Gilligan wrote in her book, "Why Does the Patriarchy Persist?" It's a key insight. She writes that in this culture, a little boy knows by the time he's 5 years old that he's better than being a girl, and acts accordingly. Right? And little girls know before she hits puberty that she must keep her truths to herself and not speak out loud and take care of other people, defer to other people. That's the lesson. Now, she was working with a heteronormative framework here. I can't speak to what happens where other folks who fit otherwise. I'm sure it's filled with confusion. But those are the rules, and everybody knows what the rules are. So the children learn young about domination. And it doesn't have to come from mom and dad. It's in the air that we breathe. They know who is allowed to speak and who has to keep quiet. They know who does the caretaking and who's being cared for. And what this does, it creates a climate of inauthenticity. It fills us with shame because we know This is not authentic. We know it. Children just want to be themselves. And the system of domination teaches them they can't be themselves. You can't cry. And you have to take care of other people and keep your opinions to yourself. Right? The actress America Ferraro, in her TED Talk, said this: change will come when each of us has the courage to question our own fundamental values and beliefs, and then see to it that our actions lead to our best intentions. I am one of millions of people who have been told that in order to fulfill my dreams, I have to resist the truth of who I am. Resist the truth. This is Carol Gilligan's research. Resist the truth, little boy, don't cry. Resist saying anything, little girl. You don't matter. This all happens when we're very, very young. And each of us can name some of the memories that I suggest might be coming up. When you were shamed. You were shamed about your body size, or your gender, or your race, or who you liked, what you liked to do, whether or not it fit the rules, right? So, I wrote a book, Who Told You That You Were Naked? Meditations on the Sexual Body. And this summarizes my 40 years of pastoral insights. And I tried to think of, psychologically, what are the problems? What are the fears? What is the damage? What is the inauthenticity that we're reacting to in this system of domination? And then created the essays on that. All of those domination systems are interconnected and intersect at our flesh point and our blood. And it squeezes out pleasure. And it squeezes out intimacy. And it creates barriers to being a community that plays together, that loves together, that enjoys life as the sacred gift that it is. We're busy playing the games of the domination system. We need a lifeline. We need somebody to shine a light. Because as children, we knew we were playing a game. We knew we'd rather play with that little person. But Mom says, no, you can't. They're on the other side of the tracks. You can't play with that kid, right? That's how it starts. So, how do we tackle this human body mess? It can't be activism, sociologists among us, until we recognize we're swimming in it ourselves. We can't liberate other people if we are not liberated ourselves. We can't help release any other chains if we ourselves are chained to our inauthentic self. There's a wonderful article in a book, Believe Me, How Trusting Women Can Change the World. And it's called Listening Will Never Be Enough. It's written by a trans woman, Catherine Cross. And she is critical about the culture we have around victimization. She said, #MeToo became a parade of individual celebrities that all but obscured the structural realities that they were pointing to. Realities that would not go away with the naming, the firing, the resignation of one abuser. Worse, it catered to the worst aspects of pain commodification, which had already taken root in activism itself. Yet the mainstream press often struggles to shoehorn reporting into pre-existing narratives rather than recognizing how this movement was all tied into larger trends in reactionary politics, for which rebellions against political correctness was merely fig leaves covering a pulsating hatred of women and minorities and poor, shielding the immodesty of neo-fascism's raging priapism. That means a prolonged erection, in case you didn't know that. Strong. So she's making a case. We have to do both. We have to name the systems, not be content with just looking at poor little victim, right? So she's pulling it together. We cannot break down those larger systems until we understand the severing of our own bodies from our spirits. The system was designed, created, it happened to suppress, repress, and control us through conformity and uniformity and obedience to those rules of domination. And that creates scars, and it creates trauma and abuse and a heck of a lot of sexual ignorance. As an aside, I fail to see how our scars of body injustice and our shame and guilt and fear can be healed by an asexual Savior who is a celibate Messiah who has never been married and never had a sexual feeling toward any other person because he was above such base feelings. Don't get me started on St. Augustine, okay? Who wrote all of this stuff because of his own trauma and guilt and of his profligate youth. Sin and sex become synonymous in the church, in a domination system, because it uses it. It uses it to keep people down. Limiting pleasure, making us suspicious of pleasure, too much pleasure. But once we recognize and begin to heal our own shame, our own abuse, our own toxicity that we have absorbed about our own bodies, we begin to recognize the Christian church has as its main central tenet good news for the body. A Jesus who broke religious rules that didn't work, who attended parties and banquets and feasts, and in so doing loved himself and those around him and his enemies and his God. We remember that Bishop Athanasius of Alexandria in the 3rd century said, Jesus became human so we might become divine. This bishop did not put down the flesh as sinful, but elevated humanity. This is our good news, but we cannot pronounce it until we see we are the light. And it's in these vessels that we call our sexual bodies, sacred vessels. When we remember who we are, made in the image of the divine, and we are here to tend the gardens of this sensual planet, to enjoy this gift of life, and to seek the pleasure of walking together with the divine impulse of the sacred. I mentioned America Ferrara's previous quote. This is how she ends that. My identity is not my obstacle. My identity is my superpower. And I, for one, am ready to stop resisting and start existing as my full and authentic self. Carol Gilligan's work says there's good news. Children know they're playing games. They know it, and they know it doesn't make sense. But to survive, they obey, and it gets into our systems. The good news is we can stop playing the games. And the way we do that is to start speaking it out loud about the shame and the abuse and the toxicity, and not point fingers, as Catherine Ross Cross says, to just individual victims, individual groups. No, it infects all of us. You tell me what is happening to the souls of those soldiers in Gaza, killing families, setting fire to refugee tents. Oh, this domination system is destructive to everybody, including those who say they are entitled. Sexual authenticity threatens a system of domination because authentic people think for themselves and refuse to be silenced. It is trans people who say, "This is who I am," without apology. It's LGBT folks and gender fluid folks and queer folks who say, "This is who I am," without apology. And all of those who have paid the price of being inauthentic say, "Yes, this is who I am." And I, for one, am ready to stop resisting and start existing as my full and authentic self. Authentic people recognize their own wounding and take responsibility for healing, surrounding themselves with a community in order to heal and do the work of healing. We cannot fix the systems if we have not healed ourselves. We cannot point out the dysfunction in the lives of bigoted sheriffs in Idaho and presidential and vice president candidates invested in a domination until we recognize our own dysfunction and inauthenticity and shame. Authenticity is the key. Christian thinkers and others, in spite of our sexual wounding and our sexual messes, the body, flesh is not that bad and sinful. Rather, our sexual and sensual bodies are actually filled with the divine presence itself. And it was for this reason that Jesus came to walk among us, to show us the way. St. Irenaeus taught Jesus became who we are in order to make us what he is himself. The light of the world, my friend. Shine the light. So what I'd like to invite you to do is do another poem with me as I close. And you have one phrase to say. That's easier. This comes from the book. It's called "I Am Not My Behavior." And I will read a line, and you will say, "But who I really am," and then I will respond. And then you will take a breath. And I'll say a line, and you'll say, "But who I really am." Okay? I often behave in ways that reflect I do not like my body. But who I really am is a human body divinely proclaimed as very good. Breathe. I sometimes act impulsively and stupidly. But who I really am is a human learning from mistakes. Breathe. I say I believe in God's goodness, yet live in fear of God's judgment. But who I really am is a spiritual seeker longing for home. Breathe. I try to cover my deficiencies, weaknesses, and insecurities, but who I really am is a beloved child of God. Breathe. I live in my imperfections, guilt-ridden and ashamed, but who I really am is abundantly forgiven and covered in grace. Breathe. I listen to the false beliefs and lies about my worth from those around me. Who I really am is held in God's steadfast love. Breathe. I appoint myself as the judge and the jury of my behavior, but who I really am is only slightly lower than the angels. Breathe. I live imprisoned and condemned in this false jail of my unworthiness. But who I really am is a prisoner squatting in a cell with an open door. Freedom awaits any time now.
As our benediction, I'll be offering a poem that I wrote called A Note to the Insecure. A note to the insecure. Do not be a skeptic of your beauty. Know it as an absolute truth, evolving yet deep and factual, undeniable. As you desire them, let them desire you. For who are you to deny the beauty of desire? Only to trust the beauty of conquer, the beauty of commerce, the beauty of comparison. Water reflects, and so do people. Touch and be touched. Kiss and be kissed. Want and be wanted. Be not afraid of the word beauty, for you are it.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it. Oh, everywhere I go, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, Lord, I'm gonna let it shine.
Thank you all for joining us. Tomorrow we're going to have Celebration of Life, Mark Ellis' Celebration of Life. The title of the chapel is Here I Am, Toward a Holistic Embodied Process in Times of Death, Dissonance, and Despair. So join us again tomorrow at 12. Thank you all. And thank you.
Or general conversation is fine too, without questions. Well, as of today, it has been available at Pilgrim Press that put it out, but it's also on Amazon. They just don't have the cover up for some reason, but it's still there. Yeah. I do have some extra copies I could sell you. I only bought 4. Yeah. Comments? Yes, Tyrone.
What has it been like bringing this to congregations, to clergy? Have you met resistance there, and how do you navigate that?
I'm always asked this question, Tyrone, because everybody gets a sense of how radical it is. And the short answer is the right wing hasn't found me yet, and conservative churches are afraid of me, and liberal churches are as well. Although I get lovely commendations from the more liberal and progressive pastors, particularly